when they tell you, yeah, and do you eat, sleep, talk, think just about everything when they tell you. Whoa.
Yeah, New Orleans, it's champagne time, that's for sure. We got a lot to celebrate today. Trying to pop the champagne cork, but it's not working. Damn. Well, Baldy's, 30 feet underwater in Mexico, scuba diving. Therefore, we might be a little slacking today on the sound effects. But just pretend I just popped the champagne cork, because indeed, it is a beautiful day for America. I mean, we turned back the biggest assault on personal freedom that I think that the country has experienced since FDR interned American citizens in camps. And I know there's people upset. I don't pretend to understand it, but I think it's because they are, I don't want to say victims, but they have been subjected to sophisticated propaganda and lies. And I'm going to get into that in a minute. I know it's something that I talk about a lot, but I just don't think that that's talked about enough, and I base that on my personal experience. For example, the very fine people hoax that we hear all the time, and I'm so sorry to say that last week, former President of the United States, Barack Obama, was out there beating the drums for Kamala, telling people, you know that he called Nazis very fine people, when it just is a total lie, and he knows it. And even the cat ladies at Snopes, the lefty cat ladies at Snopes, have debunked the very fine people lie. Yet a former president of the United States would stoop so low as to say that. And I just don't get it. I don't understand why we can't just talk about the issues. I think it's because the left's position on the important issues are the things that American people actually care about. They're just so wrong on those issues that they have to stir up lies to make people hate each other. And I'm just so over it. So for the 100th time, since Barack Obama thought it was okay to spread the lie that Trump called Nazis very fine people, I hope I never have to play this again, but I ask people all the time and they don't know about it, so I'm going to play it again, and that is the Trump very fine people clip, please, Mr. Kobe.
What you're calling the alt-left and white supremacists on the same moral plane.
I'm not putting anybody on a moral plane. What I'm saying is this. You had a group on one side and you had a group on the other, and they came at each other with clubs, and it was vicious, and it was horrible, and it was a horrible thing to watch. But there is another side. There was a group on this side, you can call them the left, or you've just called them the left, that came violently attacking the other group. So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is. Blame on both sides, and I have no doubt about it, and you don't have any doubt about it either. And if you reported it accurately, you would say.
They showed up in Charlottesville.
And you had some very bad people in that group. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. You had people in that group, excuse me, I saw the same pictures as you did. You had people in that group that were there to protest the taking down of, to them, a very, very important statue and the renaming of a park from Robert E. Lee to another name. You had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
Hear that?
But you had many people in that group other than neo-Nazis and white nationalists, okay? And the press has treated them absolutely unfairly. Now, in the other group also, you had some fine people, but you also had troublemakers, and you see them come with the black outfits and with the helmets and with the baseball bats. You had a lot of bad people in the other group too.
Sir, I'm sorry, I just didn't understand what you were saying. You were saying the press has treated white nationalists unfairly? I just didn't understand what you were saying.
There were people in that rally, and I looked the night before. If you look, there were people protesting very quietly the taking down of the statue of Robert E. Lee. I'm sure in that group there were some bad ones. The following day it looked like they had some rough, bad people, neo-Nazis, white nationalists, whatever you want to call them.
There you go.
But you had a lot of people in that group that were there to innocently protest and very legally protest because, I don't know if you know, they had a permit. The other group didn't have a permit. So I only tell you this. There are two sides to a story. I thought what took place was a horrible moment for our country, a horrible moment.
Okay, so I hope I don't have to play that again, but when Barack Obama goes out and, feels the need to perpetuate what he knows is a lie, you have to ask yourself, why is that? Is it because their positions on letting illegal, unvetted immigrants flood the country is so unpopular that they try to distract Americans and create division by spreading lies about Trump? It's just crazy. So I thought I would share that. Again, also, I have some kind of cool things to talk about. Yesterday, I actually got to participate as a member of the Board of Election Supervisors. I was appointed because the regular member whose place I took was running for office, Christy Lynch. I had her on the show before, and she was very brave to go up against Troy Carter in District 2. And I hope she will continue in her efforts because somebody's got to beat down the path so that others can follow, right? Anyway, so it was really interesting. I was in the city council in New Orleans for the day, and I got to observe how we conduct our elections. And y'all know I had talked recently about Colorado. The Secretary of State of Colorado had posted the passwords for their election machines online for 4 months. And this is the same lady who had single-handedly thought she was going to get Trump removed from the Colorado ballot and had to go all the way to the Supreme Court to turn her around and say, of course, one state cannot take a presidential candidate off. But anyway, let's just compare the craziness we saw in the COVID elections and in Colorado with what actually goes on in Louisiana, and I have nothing but good things to say. I'm happy to report that our elections are safe and honestly, I think very admirable. So just give you a little overview. All the little commissioners who come in to help count the votes take an oath to the Constitution. Their phones are taken away. They can't leave. They can't communicate with the outside world. It's really strict. If they do leave, they can't come back. But part of the agreement is that they won't. And then the group that I was with was the board, and there was 5 of us. And it was super impressive the way it was run. So what we end up doing is if, let's say, somebody sends in their ballot, and this was the mistake that was on so many absentee ballots, either people forgot to get witnesses or they forgot to put their mother's maiden name. Well, it was Orleans Parish sends it back to them with an opportunity for them to fix it, and then we look at them and see if they fixed it. And I have to tell you, there's hundreds of ballots where there was no maiden name, and it was really impressive to me. We also looked at ballots where people, for some reason, filled out, like, let's say on the president, they'd fill out 7 candidates instead of just one, so that the ballot on that section of the ballot would be disqualified. And the person that runs the whole show is Betsy Stoner, and she does a great job as the executive director for the Board of Supervisors. And just throw some shout-outs to Daniel DePlessis, Kim, Angie, and then the official board members, Dr. Sandra Wilson, who's the Registrar of Voters, Lisa Manning Bridges, who's a member of the OPDEC, which I used to be a member of before I converted to being a Republican when the Democrats began to advocate censorship and war. She was great. Patrick Philpott was with the Parish Republicans. Sean Bruno, who was there as a representative of the Darren Lombard's clerk of court, but he's also a big businessman, and actually my niece works at Metairie Bank where he's on the board, and me as a government appointee. And we worked from 11 in the morning till 9 at night. And we worked so hard to make sure that everybody's vote counts. For, if we could find a way to validate the vote, we do. But sometimes things are just so messed up and people just don't do it right. But I just thought it was a great opportunity to see how New Orleans handles voting really well, and to say something good about our city in light of other places' crazy mishandling of ballots. And I will be back right after the break to talk more about the election. Welcome back. This is Michelle Godin of Baldy and The Blonde. Baldy ain't here. He's scuba diving in Mexico, so it's just me today. And I was just talking about my election day experience working as a governor's appointee to the Board of Election Supervisors. And there I was in a room of, honestly, mostly Democrats, because that's just how it was. But the Secretary of State had a lot of employees there too, and we had a great time. These were great people, and yet it was all very professional, and everything was done with the utmost concern for the integrity of the vote. It's very impressive, and it is. People are allowed to observe, and in fact, we had an observer from the Parish Republican Executive Committee. So, anyway, my point is, what I was thinking about is, as we were laughing and singing and doing all kinds of, having fun as New Orleans people do, that it was kind of a microcosm of America, and I have to think that most of us agree on, I think, what we want in our country. It's just that we may have policy differences. So, I think probably most people think we shouldn't have an open border, and that if, Americans have to be practically strip searched to get on a plane, maybe an illegal crossing our border, jumping ahead of all the people patiently waiting, we should maybe know his name. And I know some of y'all saw that there was an arrest of a man this week who molested a 4, 7, and a 9-year-old child, and he was illegal. And that's not to say, I know all, the lefties always say, oh, well, they commit crime at a lower rate. First of all, I don't believe that. And secondly, it doesn't matter. They're not supposed to be here. And there is a legal way to enter this country. And going forward, I think we might actually start enforcing our border as we did under Trump in his 4 embattled years where the Democrats fought him on everything. This time we have a mandate. We won big. All the swing states, the Senate, the House, and the popular vote. So that's a mandate. And, for the people who are upset, I think you might be pleasantly surprised. In addition to closed borders, we should have a much better economic policy that favors Americans, and we use tariffs just to people who are trying to take advantage of us. So you use what's called retaliatory tariffs. And in NATO, make NATO pay their fair share, and I bet you we won't be involved in the horrific murder of millions of innocents in Ukraine, because we're going to get out of war, because Trump is a very anti-war. So that's exciting. And also, free speech is back. I don't think you'll be seeing the censorship you saw under Biden and Harris, who are both avid proponents of censorship in what was a growing and alarming trend in the United States, which I think I fully documented in our first show, and you should go listen to those clips because they're just awful. And to see how close we came to having a person be elected president who believes in the abrogation of free speech, or at least her right to send out the DOJ, that's the Department of Injustice, to go after people for their speech. It's hey, we dodged a bullet, that's for sure. Speaking of bullets, she's also the one that said she can come into your locked home without a warrant, without probable cause, to inspect whether or not you keep your gun safe. So although it's hard to imagine because she was painted as the candidate of hope and love, if you really went back and looked at what she said when she ran for president in 2019, alarming. There was a reason she was voted the most left senator, left of Bernie Sanders, before she ran for president this time. And, of course, she was complicit in the cover-up of Biden, but that's all about to come to an end. And, you know, people are upset and saying things like, oh, they can't believe that hate won. And I just don't know how to respond to such a thing. Hate is an emotion, and your government does not love you. It's not a personal relationship where you should expect to be loved. If by hate you mean persecution, the only people being persecuted over the last, really since 2008, under the Patriot Act by Bush, followed by Obama, were people who stood up to the government or dissented. That could be on the left or the right, but it so happens that the primary targets were all on the right, which is very, very frightening. People getting arrested, going to jail because of their political views. And we just can't have that in America. And as far as, women, strong women aren't allowed, well, that isn't true. One of the big proponents of Donald Trump was Tulsi Gabbard, and I've played her clips before. She was a rising star in the Democrat Party and, in fact, ran for president against Kamala and pretty much destroyed her in the debate. And that's, fortunately, Kamala did run before, so that we did have clips of her saying in her own words her pretty horrible positions. So, but we definitely have a stable of strong women on the Republican side, including Tulsi. Also, I'm real excited to say that Elon Musk has recruited Ron Paul. I love Ron Paul. I was a delegate for him to the 2008 and 12 convention. No, 12. And, he was not treated great by the Republican Party in those days because that was before we got so many people who now, there's just been a huge change in the Republican Party where it is now the party of free speech, which was Ron Paul, anti-war, which was Ron Paul. And some of these things had their roots in the Tea Party too. So it's a big realignment going on in America where I have to say the party of our youth, the Democrat Party of our youth, was the party of free speech. You probably remember seeing, if you're young, some of my audience is super young, you've probably seen pictures of old boomers with long hair and peace signs marching against the Vietnam War. And that was, unfortunately, those are most of the people now that are dying to stay in wars and curtail your right to freedom of speech. So there has been a big realignment, but going forward, I think there's a lot of cause for optimism and hope, because we have the opportunity now to get things moving in a direction that I think, obviously, the country has spoken and said, hey, we don't like inflation. We want to make our country first, which is a normal thing and a good thing. It's a great thing for America to maybe use the money that we've been wasting killing people in wars that we have no idea what for, to fix our bridges, to fix our infrastructure, and to help the people of this country, not people who came here illegally and who were placed in all the red states, let's face it. What other conclusion can you draw except that they were trying to take over and have a one-party rule? So anyway, this is Michelle Godin again on Baldy and The Blonde. You can follow us on Facebook, the Baldy and The Blonde radio show, or at Baldy Blonde on Twitter, and I'll be right back.
I'm a superstar. Yeah, I'm so damn bad. I'm just that good. And I can see you wanna be like me.
Welcome back to Baldy and The Blonde. Only there's no bald guy here today. He's swimming under the ocean, scuba diving in Mexico, and I don't know. I guess it was part of the celebration for him that we're back to being possibly a free country, or at least on our road to that. Running away now from war, inflation, invasion at our border, tax on our prosperity by endless printing of money for nonsense, scams, while the American people suffer. So I think it's a hopeful day for America, and I hope that the people who are worried will, maybe do a little research or just chill out and see what happens, because you're not going to be attacked. The attacks are actually going to end against people who were dissenters. There's no history of going after Americans by Republicans, and certainly not by Trump. It's not even his goal. His goal is to do better, and he has a history of success, and the country was better off. And anyway, that's what the people have spoken. It has nothing to do with her being a woman. She was a terrible candidate, just terrible. You could not get her to speak, answer any questions. When she was confronted with her old position, she would just say, "Oh no, I changed. I'm now for fracking." Well, here you are saying you're against it. Well, no, I'm for it now. On the rare occasions that she would sit for an interview, and those were, prepared. She needed teleprompters. She was just a disaster. And God help us that we do not have to suffer through that. Know how much lovey-hopey nonsense she used. She was a dangerous candidate, advocating for the policing of free speech, which has been already going on. So that would just be a continuation of a bad policy. And pretty shameful that she didn't concede last night. And as a woman, I'm a little disturbed by the fact that neither she nor Hillary exhibited the proper etiquette upon losing an election. And I'm understanding, of course, I'm going to hear, well, Trump didn't do it. But, things were obviously bizarre in that election, where things, unprecedented stopping of the count in the middle of the night, mysterious ballots showing up. There was at least suspicion in a lot of it. But regardless, two wrongs don't make a right. She should have conceded. That was an overwhelming, crushing defeat, and she needed to concede. I understand she finally did today as I was in the car on my way here. But and then, I've heard the criticism, oh, it's misogyny. No, it's not. It's that she was a terrible candidate who hid from the press and couldn't enunciate her positions, and also that she was a continuation of a very unpopular administration. And when given her chance to say that she would have done things differently, she did not. She said nothing comes to mind that she would do differently in an interview on The View, where God knows she couldn't have been in friendlier territory. And by the way, the poor ladies in The View, they were all in black today, in mourning. Like Morning Joe, who I think is going to have to change his name to Mourning Joe. And I hate to say that who announced Kamala wouldn't be coming out to concede last night was a New Orleanian, Cedric Richmond. Come on, Cedric, couldn't you got the girl out there to talk? And then everybody also says, oh, well, it's all about abortion, but as the Supreme Court stated, this is a state issue, and many states had abortion on the ballot yesterday. And sadly, as a person who really does not believe in this unfettered access to abortion, the viability, really, every time there's a new ballot, it gets to be more and more and more close to infanticide. it's crazy. So that is an issue that ladies will be deciding on their own, along with men in their states, and they will bear the responsibility of their votes for abortion. So I have a call. I haven't been taking calls because we just got back on the air. This is my 5th show, but I believe this is a gentleman who has another show on the station, and I thought we'd take a call today. Is John on the phone?
Yeah, my show is Holy Patriotic Jambalaya, Friday afternoons, 5 to 6.
How's it going, John? What's your question?
Great. Yes. How sweet it is. How sweet it is.
You having your champagne or your daiquiri or your whiskey or something, I hope.
Yes. And first we were deplorables, and then we were suckers,
Yeah.
and now we're garbage.
Yeah. It's
And all
it's not a good
three
way
of us
to
are-
entice voters, right?
Yes. And Obama's homeboys let him down because now they're Trump's homeboys.
That's true. The male vote has definitely shifted, and honestly, the women vote too was not what they were expecting because they were looking at women as I don't know what that stupid commercial was, but as I guess they were thinking women were going to come out and vote against their own interests, but yeah, it was crazy. It just didn't work out.
You got this imbecile named Mark Cuban.
Yeah.
Saying Trump can't handle a strong woman. His wife is a very strong woman.
Yes. So is, of course, I talk about Tulsi Gabbard a lot. Megyn Kelly. Good Lord, that's a tough woman right there. And she came out and spoke for Trump again, not because she thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread, but she recognized what was at stake, which is our freedom. And that's the freedom of men, women, black, white, Asian, gay, straight, whatever. Because if you can stop people from talking and you can shut down eminent doctors because they disagree with Dr. Fauci, who hasn't treated a patient in, I believe, 40 years, if ever, and people were losing their medical licenses. I mean, censorship is at the top of the left's list, and they really need to take a look at who they've become.
Let me tell you something about this COVID business. I call it a scandemic and a plandemic.
Yeah.
That's all it was. Coronavirus has been around for years. It's a form of a virus. It's 99.9% curable. But the media, the mainstream media, lambusted it, and my sister and my brother, John Bel Edwards, told them to go and to stop the spread of COVID, to go kneel in the corner, put their nose against the corner. Believe it or not, they did. At the time, my mother was still alive. She was suffering from dementia. She even had my mother on her damn knees. That kind of pissed me off a little bit. I said, oh, no. This is going too far.
Yeah, well, it's I appreciate your call. I appreciate your call, John. And look forward to. I think you sent me an invite to come on your show, and I will get with Mr. Baldy and arrange that. It sounds like fun. And thanks for calling. I appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you. And so, continuing on, what John was saying was that the idea of censoring doctors is the idea of the left, and that was implemented under Biden. And of course, Zuckerberg's files revealed Kamala and Biden literally had direct access to Twitter and to Facebook, telling them to take, eminent doctors and censor them so that we couldn't find out what the opposite opinion was of those that were promoting Big Pharma. And that's another great thing to look forward to is Robert F. Kennedy, who has an excellent record as a watchdog of the environment and of Big Pharma, is going to be involved heavily. Another ex-Democrat who no longer recognized his party, as many of us no longer recognize the party. And he's going to be involved along with Elon, who, streamlined Twitter. I think got rid of 75% of the employees. Dr. Paul, whose nickname in Congress was Dr. No because he voted no against all taxes. And how exciting would it be to have, an upbeat, fresh look at our bureaucracy, which is insane. It's out of control and it's insane. And I think that Elon Musk and Dr. Paul could certainly do an excellent job of that. And I heard Musk saying, which is a great idea, of course, the natural question is, okay, there's a lot of people with jobs that maybe aren't necessary anymore in the huge, giant bureaucracy. And his idea was to give them all very generous severance pay, maybe 1 of 2 years' salary and health care, to make it not a burden on those people, but to end it, stop the bleeding and And let's look at government with fresh eyes. I mean, this country was founded without an income tax. When Ron Paul would get interviewed when he was still a congressman, they would ask him, well, how would we build, the usual, how would we build the roads? The same way those dudes in Kentucky did after the hurricane. They got their I don't know, the machine, the Caterpillar things, and, created roads in 5 days that the government said was going to take 2 years. But anyway, he would always point to the Capitol behind him and say, this was constructed before we had income tax, because there were other forms of taxes that do not come out of your wages. A person shouldn't have to work so hard and have the government putting their hands in their pockets to then basically give it away with no input from us, because most Americans are against, honestly, probably at least 50% of what they spend our money on. I sure don't want to pay for bombs to go kill children in Ukraine. And that war, of course, sadly was started by the idiotic words of Kamala Harris, who went over there and announced that we were going to bring NATO to Ukraine after we promised Russia for, 40 years that we would never put a NATO country on their border. So it was a provocation, and hundreds of thousands of people died in that war. And now watch, we're going to end it. And what did anyone gain other than bravado? And these are the same people that, left us with humiliation in Afghanistan. So again, this is Michelle Godin. This is Baldy and the Blonde. And you can reach me at Baldy Blonde on Twitter, and I will be back in a minute. Welcome back to Baldy and the Blonde. I'm Michelle Godin, here today alone and popping the champagne, because I think we dodged a giant totalitarian bullet. And I know that's weird, but like I always say, it seems to me that most people hate what they think is going on in the right, but what they think is based on propaganda. And I just keep going back to the same thing, that whenever I ask people, well, did you ever really hear what the very bad people, quote, really was? No, they haven't. Did you ever really hear? I mean, I literally heard the press talking again today that Trump said he'd be a dictator on day one, so we have to really watch it. And I mean, please, that is the most ridiculous. I mean, well, they're all ridiculous. I might play that again one more time, but of course he didn't say it. He was joking around and said, well, I guess I'll be the dictator on day one as long as I forget what he said, do something. And it was obviously a joke. It's just ridiculous. And then, so the fact that the left press is still complaining as though that's real is disturbing, but they lost. They got their butts kicked, and in a resounding manner, so that we have a mandate. And I hope that we use this mandate to absolutely end the invasion at the border, get rid of the illegal criminals, figure out what to do with the other people, stop the NGOs who are facilitating the invasion at the border and getting paid tons of money to do it. I mean, I think we all know who we're looking at here. And I do think there's some wrongs that need to be righted. I'd definitely like to know more about the infiltration of the 2016 campaign by Comey and his little henchman Stroke, and, his girlfriend who sat around at the FBI office talking about their insurance policy. That's really bad. It's not water under the bridge, because it's people who were trying to subvert the will of the American voter. And then the Russia hoax ginned up by Hillary Clinton, who paid for the dossier, and the FBI that promoted that, knowing it was false, to take away again the will of the American voter, who put Trump in there to do what we wanted. And nothing got done because they consumed his entire presidency with investigations. And honestly, we don't do that. I mean, I kind of think maybe we should start thinking about some of those things, at least, only when legally justified. But I'm sick of it. We have been under Democratic rule since 2008. And before that, the Bushies. And honestly, they're just as authoritarian as the left, which is why you see Cheney and his child, Liz, hooked up with the Democrats where they belong. That's the party of warmongers and authoritarians. And by the way, anybody notice how Wisconsin voted? Land of the Cheneys? 71% for Trump. I mean, what an ass kicking. All right, so we have another call. I'm going to take it for 1 minute. Matthew?
Yes.
Hey, Matthew.
Do you remember the video of the buses of Charlottesville? And all the Antifa getting out of those buses?
Yes, I believe I do.
And nobody ever investigated who leased those buses?
Do you? No, I don't know if anyone did or did not. Do you have information about that?
No, I don't. I didn't get a license plate number on them or anything like that, but I did see the Antifa guys getting out of the buses.
I mean, they ship them around all the time. I don't understand how. Obviously, our law enforcement needs house cleaning bad because they're turned on good people like, old grandmas praying a rosary in front of an abortion clinic while guys like Antifa burn cities down, so it's crazy. Yeah.
Remember, I'm sure you did see over the period of time that you were off the air, the pallets of bricks mysteriously appearing before these riots.
Yes.
And nobody could seem to figure out how they got there.
Isn't that bizarre? It really is. I forgot about the bricks.
It's like, are we fighting the Starship Enterprise and then just down pallets of bricks?
That's a good point. And, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, look, everybody needs to be on guard as usual because control freaks that we've been living under, they don't give up easily. And just to be real clear, when I talk about the left and the crazies, I'm talking about the people that have the control. I'm not talking about the people who have been misled and who don't know the truth. Because unless you're like, I suspect you, Matthew, and me, and others who look deeper or who watch alternative media, they don't know. They just think that what Joe Scarborough says is true or Rachel Maddow says is true, and it's not. They flat out lie, and it's really disturbing.
As though fewer people are taking those people seriously anymore.
Isn't that
I
the
would
truth?
prefer it to be zero. But unfortunately, simply for technical reasons, it's not. Simply, it's easy to just turn on the boob tube and watch these people blather, as opposed to having to enter passwords and go to Rumble. And,
you know what? That's a good point. It is easier because, let me ask you something fun, Matthew. What are you looking forward to?
What's that?
What are you looking forward to with the new administration?
I'm just looking for a relief of the insane policies. Well, I'm in the oil industry, so it'd be nice to have some sane oil policies.
Hell yeah.
I'm not of the belief that we can just magically make the price of oil go down to $2 a gallon.
No.
Because that would mean that oil is at about $40 a barrel, and that means that nobody in the oil industry in the United States can get paid.
No. We're Louisiana people, honey. We want the oil industry to do well. And, that's a good point because one of the first things, I think day one, was Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline. And
shut down the pipeline.
Yep, and he's been after us.
Drilling.
Yep.
Leases for new projects. But you can put up a freaking windmill out there.
Yeah, and that's disgusting. And the bird killers and eyesores, and they're inefficient. And yeah, of course, and whereas oil and gas and nuclear, all and even coal, because the U.S. we have clean coal as opposed to China, who they love, who puts up a disgusting Anyway, but we can't get off on that, Matthew, because I'm running out on the show here. I'm glad to talk with you, though. You're a very interesting caller. And we will be back next week with more Baldy and the Blonde. Again, you can reach us at baldyandtheblonde.com. Follow me on Twitter at Baldy Blonde. It says my screen name's Blondie. I do tend to be a little spicy on there, so you might enjoy it. And please like or join our Facebook group, Baldy and the Blonde Radio Show. I'm just super glad that we have the opportunity to go forward now, freed of so many of the abuses that we were actually suffering. I'm sorry for people that feel hurt and upset, but I can assure you I don't know any people who are out to hurt anyone, and this is Baldy and the Blonde.